What are secondary roles? The best way to understand secondary roles is with the help of an example. Let us say that you work on the sales project and have been assigned a role called the role sales developer, which allows you to select all data from the sales schema. You're also assigned to the finance team where you work when you have some free time. And you have a role called role finance developer, which gives you access to all the tables in the finance schema. When you work on the sales team, you use the role sales developer to do your work. When you work on the finance team, you use the role finance developer to do your work. Now, one day you get a call from Finance VP Bill saying that he wants you to get him data from finance and sales, and this requires you to join tables in the finance and sales schema. You assume the role of finance developer and access the finance tables. However, when trying to join with the tables in the sales schema, you get the error table not found. This makes sense because the role finance developer does not have access to the sales data. However, if you switch to the sales developer role, you will lose access to the finance table. So, what can we do so that we have access to the privileges of role finance developer and role sales developer, which is what we need in order to join tables from both the schema? And the answer to this question is secondary roles. Secondary roles are Snowflake's way of allowing a user to use privileges for more than one role in a given Snowsite session. Privileges from all roles can be activated in a session by using use secondary role all in Snowsite. When you execute this command, all the privileges from all the roles that you have access to become available in that session. You will now be able to join the tables from the sales and finance schema to generate the data requested by VP Finance. The role you assume when the Snowside session starts is called the primary role, and all other roles which have been assigned to you are called secondary roles. In this lab exercise, I will demonstrate secondary role functionality. I will start off by using the database HRMS. Next, I will create the sales schema in the HRMS database. I will create table daily sales which captures daily sale information and will follow that up by inserting data into the daily sales table. I am able to see the data I just inserted in the table. Next, I will create a custom role sales developer, to which I will grant all the privileges needed to access data from the sales schema. Now that the role is ready, I will assign this role to user Rahul, our favorite data engineer. I will repeat the same action for finance, creating schema, table, role, and granting access of the created objects to the role. The last statement grants role finance developer to user Rahul. I will now log into Snowflake as user Rahul and see if I can join the sales and finance tables. I am logged in as user Rahul and you can see the username at the bottom left. In order to save time, I saved a worksheet with all the code. The first thing I want to do is see what roles I have access to. I see the role sales developer and the role finance developer, the two roles I need for the lab. I also have access to role data engineer, which was granted to user Rahul in a previous lab exercise and is set as the default role. For this lab, I will be using database HRMS. I am currently logged in with my default role and will switch to role finance developer. I will list the schemas that I have access to. I see the finance schema, however, I do not see the sales schema, indicating that with the role finance developer, I will not be able to access the sales data. I will now switch to role sales developer and list the schemas. I see the sales schema, but I do not see the finance schema, indicating that with role sales developer, I will not be able to access the finance data. If I select data from daily sales, it is successful. Select from product profit margin is not working and it is expected as role sales developer does not have access to finance data. If I switch my role to role finance developer and rerun the query, I will be able to select from product profit margin, But now I will lose access to daily sales. Also, if I join the two tables, I will get an error. So my situation is that I have two roles that give me privilege to both the schemas, but I am not able to use the privileges simultaneously from both of them to be able to join the tables and get an output. So how does one fix this problem? And the answer, as you would have already guessed, is enable secondary roles. Before I enable secondary roles, I can check to see if any secondary roles are already enabled. The value for roles is empty, which means that the secondary roles are not enabled. I executed the use secondary roles all command, and now I expect privileges from both the roles, role finance developer and role sales developer, to be available to me. The role finance developer is the primary role that I am logged in as, and the role sales developer is the secondary role that is enabled in this session. In addition to role sales developer, user Rahul will also have access to the privileges of role data engineer enabled in this session, as it is a role granted to him. The all in the use secondary roles all means that all the roles assigned to the user will be enabled in the session. I will now reattempt to join the two tables. The join is a success. This is how you can use secondary roles and get access to more than one role in a session. If you want to disable secondary role for any reason, you can replace all with none and rerun it, and the secondary role privilege will be removed. As you can see, the value for the role is blank, indicating that the secondary roles have been disabled. Let me ask you a question. If user Rahul was granted 10 roles and he ran use secondary roles all the 10 roles be enabled in his session? As I discussed a few minutes back, all roles assigned to a user will be enabled in the session when use secondary roles all is run, and hence all the 10 roles and their privileges will be available to user Rahul. However, there can be scenarios where you don't want to enable all the roles that are assigned to you because some of these roles may have privileges to drop databases, schemas, or tables, and enabling them could get you into a lot of trouble if you accidentally run statements that drop them. So the question is, how do you enable just a subset of roles assigned to you? To enable just a subset of roles assigned to you, instead of using the statement use secondary roles all, use secondary roles with the name of the role that you want to enable in the session as a secondary role. The currently assumed role is role finance developer, and I will run use secondary roles with the role sales developer. I will check to see what roles are enabled in the session, and I can see that the role sales developer is the secondary role enabled. Role data engineer, which was enabled when I ran use secondary roles all, is not there. If you want to enable multiple secondary roles, you can do so by listing them one after the other, separated by commas. As you can see now, both the roles are showing up as secondary roles. So this is how, if a user has been granted 10 roles and you want to just enable 2 of them, you can use those 2 role names in the use secondary role statement and enable them for the session instead of enabling them all.